Hey there you lot, welcome back to Fact Lens Fish. Today's video is going to be part 3 of my little series on the tank rack rebuild in my fish room. What we're going to be doing today is some work renovating these tanks that are sitting here behind me, and I'll take you around the room and show you how far I've got with moving fish and breaking down the existing tanks. And it's a long slow process. We've had some weather behind us most of the week and it's slowed me up a bit, but anyway, we'll see you on the other side for how far I have gone. Rightio, so as I mentioned in the outset, I'm a little bit further behind. It's been nothing but falling behind, and part of the problem we've had is we've had a fair bit of rain this week down here in Hobart. So when I came out here a couple of hours ago, it was actually clear sky and pretty nice, and we've got another lot of weather looming up on us. I don't think there's as much rain in that as what there has been, but slowing me up on some stuff that would be a lot easier if it wasn't raining. The next thing I'm looking at doing is renovating these tanks that I was able to acquire a little while back from a chain store down here that's changed hands a few times over and gone through various renovations. They dumped a heap of these tanks out into the community at times, and I've managed to secure a few thanks to Alison and Jace for the lead, and it's now time to renovate them. My wife came home happy today because they've been sitting on these slats of timber over here in the driveway for the best part of 4 months, and she's obviously sick of looking at them. So what we've done today is we've got them up on the sawhorses here just to a more comfortable working height, and there's various jobs to do here, right? They look awful at the minute because they've had dividers in them at times. So you'll see, like, I've taken a divider out, we've got silicone residual on the front glass there, which is all pretty bloody cosmetic. The work that I've done to this point is to take out, these had like an inbuilt weir system, plumbing everywhere, really complicated, over-engineered as far as I'm concerned sort of design. But what it's going to allow me for, the piece on top formed the back wall of that weir, and that's obviously out of the tank now, and I'm going to use that bit of glass and a couple of others, which is going to allow me to reproduce what I've got in my shed. And you'll see here I've cut a couple of braces already from that. I'm going to cut 20mm braces for each tank, and I'm going to also cut like a 10mm or so strip down the end here. The dividers that were in the tank, I've actually salvaged those, and they're going to give me lids that are a decent sized lid. So I've got 8 of these, and what I'll be doing is using this plastic track, which is the system I use in most of my tanks, to run these sliding lids across. So I've got to cut another bit of glass to go across the back here. You'll also see on the end, this is where the plumbing went into the tank. I've got to patch those holes across the top, and down here in the left corner we've got the plumbing that allowed them to drain their tanks, and I'm still not sure. I think I can use that in my new build. I've just got to do a bit of measuring because it is quite close into the corner, and I just want to make sure that I can, with the way I'm going to build my timber racks, that the locking nut on the back of my bulkhead will be able to fit into that corner. So there's a little bit of work to do there. So the next job at hand is to get onto our cutter over here, cut all this random glass that I'm going to need, and I'll show you how I'm going to do that. And once I've siliconed all the various bits of glass in, then we'll work at getting rid of this blue paint, which is a bit damaged on the ends, and I'm going to be painting probably black. I generally go with black for my tanks, and we'll talk you through how I do all that. So there's a few hours work coming up on bringing these bad boys back to life, but I reckon they're going to look pretty good when we get all this unsightly sort of old silicon and the bits of gravel and just the salt that's on the glass, getting them all clean and schmick. They're going to look $1 million when we're done, and these are they're a good solid tank. They're 8 to, I think, maybe even 10 mil glass. Certainly they were heavy to lift up, and they're going to be a good result for me when I'm done. Time for me to start cutting up some glass to do this refurb on these tanks, and I've learnt the hard way with several attempts with your standard little glass cutter that we can all buy that it's a really low percentage return for effort. And what I discovered a few years ago was this gadget down here is what we call a tile cutter. It's a pull style action, so we've got a highly adjustable platform. We've got a ruler so we can do our measurements. You can actually change angles to if you're cutting bevels on lids or whatever, so that's a great feature. And what I found is I get a really strong positive success rate with using this device. Now, back in the day, I discovered that you can actually, or I hope you still can in your area, but down here it changed, you can, believe it or not, rent these from Bunnings. They have a hire shop, I think, on their website, so depending on your location it might well be worth looking at that, and you can hire them on an hourly basis, a half daily basis, or a weekly basis, so it brings the cost down a lot. I do just enough glass cutting that I found that it was worth buying one, so I think I spent about $340 on this, and it's been a game changer. The first part of the cut I'm going to do is some patches for some holes. So I've just got a little bit of 6mm glass here that's about the right width, and Elwood, go away, mate. So what I'm going to do is butt that up against our, this is an adjustable that allows me to set the width that I want to run at, and we're just going to hold that carefully flat on that side. We're going to bring our cutter down. Now the idea is to bring it onto the glass about 10 to 15mm from the end, push it away to score to the end, and then drag towards you. And on this lighter glass, these little foot there, you just give a little down push, break your glass, and there's your little patch. Nice and square, perfectly straight. That's come out really well. I'm going to just drop this in this bucket of water for the moment, and I'll explain that in a second. We've got to take some sharp edges off there. I've chosen this bit of glass, by the way, because it actually has some rounded edges on it already. I'm going to smooth those other edges. I'll talk about that in a second. So I need 4 patches. So that's 2. 3. And 4. Now this bit of glass will go into my box of bits and bobs out the back, which might be a patch for another tank for another day. So that's cutting 6mm glass. These work really easily, and that was a bit rickety because it was quite a short cutting stroke. The other thing I forgot to mention about the tile cutter, this is, they come in various sizes, so when you're looking at them potentially 30 centimetres refers to the length of cut that you can get out of them. This is a, I believe, a 60 centimetre, so I can go all the way out there, which does most of the sort of work that I'm going to do. Right, now the next part we're going to do is I'll show you cutting these braces. I've just got to get my little adjuster off. I've just got the blue clamp there because I've already cut a brace yesterday just to see how I went, and I want to obviously reproduce those to be uniform. And as I've mentioned in the woodworking video, enough animals, I struggle with eyesight and measuring, so that's why I put the clamp there. I'm just going to make a couple more braces now. If my lovely Henry could get off the next bit of glass. Actually, I've missed a step there. We're just going to take this off again for a sec because I've got to do...
I'll
Henry.
grab him.
So this weird looking piece of glass was part of the backdrop. Like those tanks came with a weir built into them, and they engineered these amazing backdrops. Look out, mate. And it's a strange bit of glass, but as luck would have it, this dimension is already perfect for making the cross braces we're about to produce. Now this is a bigger bit of glass, so the little challenge is I've just got to support this free floating end. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to square across here, but I don't want to try and be too greedy. If I go too close to these curved sections here, the chances are when I go to snap this, I will probably not get a straight cut. So I'm going to give up a little bit to hopefully get a good outcome. Alright, so here we go. Now these cutters, by the way, you can adjust this up a little bit based on the thickness of the tile you're trying to cut. I can get away without doing that here. So we've scored to the end and we've broken across. Now this is starting to push the limits, being thicker glass. It is a bit strong, and the little lever action thing. This tile cutter, by the way, when I hired one, it had a longer lever on it, and it was so easy to just snap your glass. And I didn't pay enough attention when I eventually bought one, because it looked the same as the one I'd hired in the little picture, and it wasn't. It's got this little flimsy handle, which doesn't give me enough leverage to just push, unfortunately, on this heavier glass. So what we're going to do is I'm going to use a bit of timber, and I'm going to use downward pressure. And the reason I'm putting the timber there is if this does happen to break, I don't want my hand in that broken glass. So it is a little bit of force required. And luckily we've got a nice result. We're perfectly square across, and like I said, I've lost that little bit of glass there, but I might be able to get a couple of pieces out of this, whoops, for another job. Okay. Oh, why did I take that clamp off? That was silly. Alright, I'm going to we'll just pause for a minute so that I can measure this dimension here, because as I said, I really want to reproduce what I've already made some of. So, all right, so we've got our scale, or our I don't know, backstop there, refixed to our scale at 204 millimeters, which is reproducing what I've already done a couple of. Apologies for the lawnmower noise, it's just kicked in, but it is Sunday, so we're going to do another cut now. And block of timber with the gratuitous rag. Now that one's a fail, I think. I saw bits and pieces going everywhere. Interesting, like the cut actually, well, a little bit of a fail there unfortunately, and we've managed to jam on our scale. So that one's, at this stage, not much help. And what we hope is that, luckily on our main piece, we've still got a good straight edge there, so it's not irredeemable. So let's try again. And this is the one thing that I've noticed, right, like whenever I've worked with 4mm, 6mm glass, I've had virtually zero issues with this cutter. The few times I've had a little bit of drama is with bigger bits of glass, thicker. This is 8, possibly 10mm. Try again. Okay, that sounded like a more even score. I think what we'll do is we'll just move our slide, because I think that's where I caused some issues. There we go. Now that one's come out perfectly, so I'm well happy with that. So this now this glass, you've got to be very careful. This is still a very sharp edge, and depending on which YouTubers you watched, I've seen people fix this glass with sandpaper. That's not my preferred method. What I use is what we call an oil stone. This is a tool you would use for sharpening chisels and axes and whatnot. And it's basically, you put oil on that that's rough, usually a rougher surface and a finer surface. And you would typically smear some lubricating oil and grind your chisel on these. What I found is this works pretty well for our, I'll demonstrate on the little patches, because I would usually do this in a sink. So down the bottom here, carefully, these are some of our little patches that we've made, and all I'm going to do is smooth that edge that I've cut a few strokes with the oil stone, just on the corners. Go to the other side. And the reason I like the oil stone is I just fear that if I'm using sandpaper, I'm going to slice through that sandpaper and get my hand. So that's now. No, if you whack your hand really hard against that, yes, you're probably still going to cut yourself. It's like a cardboard box sort of deal. But that's how I'm going to proceed on to cut all this glass. And yeah, I can't speak highly enough of this tool as a means of getting good results. Yes, I've had a fail on camera, but that's working with heavy glass, which is I challenge you to do that with a handheld glass cutter with any better success rate. So that's how we'll go now. I'll bang on and get these all cut, and we'll resume later on when we start doing some silicon work. This weather is really slowed me up. As I've mentioned, we're still raining and crappy. I'm not going to get anywhere near silicon today, but sometimes you've got to take what it gives you and try and spin it. And what I'm going to have a go at doing, given that these tanks have been sitting in the rain for 24 hours, is getting rid of some of this blue paint. Typically when you're getting paint off tanks, the best way to go is safety blade, and what can happen is the wet weather might have helped us with softening this paint. Interestingly, it's still flaking a little bit there, but basically this is the method required for getting the tank, this old paint off. This is just acrylic paint. And what I've done with it previously that works quite well, and what I was going to do with this, had it been a clear day, is you get a wet towel and sort of hang it where you need to soften the paint, and it just expedites this process of scraping. You can see this paint's been put on with a rattle gun, a spray gun. It's kind of porous and spotty, and that's actually going to make it more annoying for what I'm trying to do here, because it's not necessarily thick. Anyway, I probably need a sharper blade. I just grabbed one that was at hand rather than a fresh one, but nothing terribly scientific here. Just a matter of slowly chipping away at it. And moisture always helps, right? So if you were doing this completely dry, I'd be using some Windex, some spray bottle of Windex, just to help with this job. So it's not terribly riveting viewing, but it's just more grunt work. So that's how we'll get this paint off, and I'll turn the phone off now because it's hard to film and scrape at the same time, but you get the idea. I'm just going to offer a quick update. I went on to cut more and more glass the other day, and I got better at it, and I realised that I was doing a couple of things wrong on the cutter. I hadn't used some spray lube, silicone based, to keep this cutter running smoothly, which you might have noticed I was sort of jerking all over the place when I was cutting. And the other thing I've learned is that I did put a little bit of effort into adjusting the height of my guide, and it's got me to the point where I can cut the 10mm pretty effortlessly now. So I'll just show you a couple just to prove that I was struggling a bit. And the trick was to, once I got the height right, to base the cutter right at the end when I do my little push. And I didn't get the result I wanted because I didn't put it on the glass. So cutting that pretty easily now, just to push our luck. We'll try and do 2 in a row quickly, and this is going to be a little bit near one of these curly bits, so high success likelihood of failure, but we'll see if I can get it done right. And look at that, there's our gnarly little curly bit, and there's another nice straight bit. So I learnt by doing. Repetition was key, and yeah, lubricate that bar along which your cutter runs, get the height set properly, and break at the end nearest you, and it seemed to be quite successful. Alrighty, I'm a couple of hours on now. I've done some work on this tank to the right. This one was a bit more complicated because the rail on the left hand side was sitting much lower than the rail on the back of the tank, and that was going to create some issues for me with running my sliding lids and braces, where it was going to be sitting up quite above flush at the front, and it was going to be pretty unsightly. So I decided to do a bit extra on that one and pull out that rail and clean it all up, and we've now got the 3 bracing pieces secured, and two secured. I've got to do the main central brace tomorrow, but they're leveled flush to the front now via this bit of timber that I've clamped to this piece of glass, and we've siliconed the rail back in place up under that glass now, so that we've got a new height set on that one. Anyway, here's a tank that's ready to go. I've done an hour or so of scraping and picking using the safety blades and a bit of Windex to sort of moisten that up, to get rid of excess silicon and just some crustiness that had resulted. from the tanks being put away sort of dirty and left in storage for a long period of time, and we're kind of ready to move on to the next bit now. So let's get on to that, eh? All right. First job I'm going to do is to put our little patch on. So remember, this was one of the first bits of glass I cut the other day. I hope my audio is coming through okay, because I've lost a little part that normally goes into my little remote camera mic, and so I'm trying with a different mic today. I've just got my patch sitting on top here, and this silicone was only opened an hour or two ago when I did that other bit of work. I'm putting on a liberal amount here. Silicone gun technique, if you push that little clicker there when you've been squeezing, it stops it continuing to pressurize, and it tries to avoid this scenario where you've got silicone dripping off the end, which obviously can be a nuisance if you are trying to keep your job nice and clean. Oops. I'm just going to lightly smear this, and we can put the rest near where we're going to place our patch, and it's just a matter of pushing that on, giving it a good bit of pressure to, and I like to just jiggle it backwards and forwards a little bit to smooth out any potential air bubbles. Now that's just sitting up, way up the top of that wall, and there's nothing supporting that, so I'm going to just put a little bit of black tape on there to help support it. Hello, Henry. It's been so long since you've come and helped me. Alright, so there's our first piece in place. The next piece is our end glass, and there's no measurement required here, right? This is just going hard against the edge, so all I'm going to do is just lift that over out of the way. I could have measured and put some texture marks, but it's not that critical. I'm going to run silicone along my rails. And then I'm going to just carefully use my thumb to gauge height, and one long smooth squeeze, in this case a couple of squeezes, to get front to back along that edge. Depressurize, hang that there, and we're just going to carefully lift that into place. And once again, I want to get a nice even joint here, so I'm just going to rock it backwards and forwards a little bit. Good squeeze, and now gently a down squeeze, and what I didn't get ready was my little yellow silicone doodad. There we go. So I'm just going to use my finger to smooth this silicone, get rid of the excess that's squeezed. Now obviously this is a breeding tank, right? If this was in your lounge room, obviously I'd be trying a lot harder to do a more professional job. But this is not critical for the strength of the tank, what I'm doing here, but it's critical for me getting it to the format that I like with these sliding lids. And I'll, as I said, I'll drill some holes in here later on. We'll show you how I do that, so that I can put air lines in for my sponge filters and egg tumblers or fry baskets, whatever I want to do. Now, the next part is the centre brace, and we are getting to the point now where we want to make sure we get that dead centre. And because I've got my sliding lids all in place, I can now lift out my centre brace, find my silicone gun, and we're gonna run our next couple of beads of silicone across. One and two. I'm a shocker for getting silicone on my hands at every touch of the gun, which is obviously not ideal if you're trying to do really neat work, but as I said, it's not a tank for my lounge room, it's going outside into a working fish room where complete aesthetics is not too important. Now I'm just going to check my positioning on that by, I want my lid to be able to slide across and back smoothly, and we'll check that the other lid will do the same. So I'm happy with that. Now we'll run down the other end. Hopefully my camera will track me. Right, so you heard the key words there. I hope my camera tracks me, even if you could hear it, because the microphone issue was a problem, and of course the camera didn't track either. So what I've gone on to do is finished this first tank, or the second tank from the end here. So it's got our piece at either end secured and our central brace secured, and that'll sit overnight now, and we will revisit tomorrow. And at that stage I can potentially put in the two bits that are going to go at the back here to form full closure when my lid has slid all the way to the front like that. I can't do that until some of my clamps become available, and that will slow me up a little bit. But you know, I'm happy. Like, today's weather's been ideal for this job, as I mentioned at the outset. So not as much progress as I would like, once again. And something I forgot to mention along the way is the silicone that you're using here is rated to be aquarium safe. I use the Selleys brand, the clear silicone, clear for glass, but that aquarium safe bit, I believe that refers to you get silicone that you use in the bathroom situation for tiles and shower recesses and so on, and that I believe carries a chemical in it which is a mold inhibitor, and that's not good for fish. So check on your when you're buying silicone that you're getting the one that's rated aquarium safe, because I think it doesn't have that compound in it, which obviously you don't want leaching out into your tank scenario. Alright, so there's a little bit more chipping away. We're getting there. We've still got to get this blue paint off, because the other day I lost interest in that as well, and it just goes on and on and on. Another nice sunny day in Tassie. I've got to work this afternoon. I've done 90% of the work on these tanks now. I've got all my end and cross bracing installed. We've got our sliding lids there. I do have to cut some more glass to put a little panel in the back here. It's wet up there, Henry, but come and say hello. Hello, mate. So these four tanks are 90% complete. I've still got to put some better effort into scraping this blue paint off. It's quite old and it's turning out to be rather hard. I've got to find the little tool that my safety blade goes into, but painting will won't take long. And I've got to drill some holes, as I mentioned, in the ends here and in the centre for sponge filter, line access and so on. I'll cover that in the next video because I've realised this one's gone on quite a while now. We'll just head out to the shed again and I'll show you what's been going on in and around that in the down times. I'm slowly getting there. And I've got this weekend off work, so I'm hoping to really kick some goals this weekend finally. Got our first 4 tanks fully out of the shed. I've got 8 3-footers currently in this rack, and the new situation is going to end up with 4 3-footers being used. So what I'm going to do is pick the best 4, and I'll scrap the rest. Given that if I was to try and sell them, people would just beat you down, even though glass is really expensive in Tassie, and you know, I'd be lucky to get offered $30 for a tank that's got $300 worth of glass in it. So they're more use to me. I'll scrap them, I'll pull them apart and stack the glass away, and that'll be my supply of lids. You know, when I invariably drop a lid down the track, that'll save me some dollars there. And here's the rack as it looks now. 14 tanks originally, 13 out of 14 empty and either got sand out and disconnected completely, or these last couple up the top, they're dry. I've just got to scoop the sand out. I've started pulling some of the shelving apart, and I can lift the 3-footers out by myself with a bit of care. I'm going to get my mate Oliver to help me tomorrow to lift the 6 4-footers out. And here's our last tank of fish that I've got to get to. So that's where we're at. It's been going on. You could probably hear my voice is a bit crappy. I got a little bit sick again this week. Love this time of year with all the lurgies that go around. So that's where we'll leave off episode 3. My next job is to get all this glass out, and then we can pull out the old rack, and then the real fun stuff begins. So hope you've been getting some benefit. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.